welcome you, David Johnson, to this show. Thank you so very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Again, thanks for joining us. The first question that I had is, when researching you and the project and your partnerships with the nonprofit, you're a producer. You have been an executive producer. You're an entertainment-type person. I would love to know what inspired you to getting into guiding people through recovery.
I was doing relationship counseling when I was 15 in high school, and then in college I worked with incest survivor groups. And so I've always been a caretaker, and my wife, who's an MFT, was in the field and was seeing how people, every facility gets people, or especially younger age kids, who are kind of playing the game with trust funds or parents. But she was seeing the individuals who were doing the most work, who would, instead of just doing 3 pages, they'd do 5. They were still relapsing on the plane ride home. And so she saw the rubber band effect of the bubble approach, where, completely isolate the outside world, was too great. So she came up with the idea of creating a higher-end sober living with a lot of staffing. So our initial program was a one-on-one staffing sober living model. So a higher level of support than most are. And then from there we transitioned into a treatment model 5 or 6 years ago.
Thank you. A lot of our listeners, including some of our earlier callers, make no secret of their own dealings with recovery and sober living. So for those people, I'm glad that you're here today as well, because it's an ongoing process. It's a forever process. I'd like to know, what is the greatest misconception about people battling addiction?
Well, unfortunately, you've got multi-billion-dollar ad campaigns that have been in existence for 80 or more years convincing us as a society that addiction is a character or moral-based issue. Even within the 12-step community, you hear the fact that you have a character defect. You really don't. The 3 components that determine addiction are genetics. There's a predisposition. It's in the father's line, 50%, mother's 55%. It's in both. About a 60% predisposition. What really comes down to it, though, is how big is the hole in your chest. I'm very clear with my client base that half of my clients are alive today because of their addiction. Their addiction was a powerful enough Band-Aid to buy them time until better help and support was available to them. So it's either, it can be trauma-based, which is how most people, look at this, but about 6 or 7 years ago, a number of studies came out that showed attachment disorders in young children can create the same trauma effect. So the larger the hole in your chest, the bigger the Band-Aid effect that you're looking for. Because the mistake that non-addicted people think, when they look at an addict, is that, they're just making these stupid decisions to get high, to have this euphoric feeling. But if you're familiar with your own addiction, I'm not sure whether it was alcohol or drugs, by the time you cross that invisible line, you're not getting high anymore. It's all about just getting loaded. But the implication from the marketing system is that it's a character-based decision, so that everyone else in our society believes that it can't happen to them. Now, I'm not an alcoholic or an addict. Now, if you saw how much I drank in my fraternity days at UCLA, I could have kept up the pace with most of the people that have come through my fraternity, my facility. The truth is, the difference between me and any of my clients has been luck. Because the third component, behind genetics and how big is the hole in your chest, it's a roll of the dice in Vegas. I could take 2 genetic twins with the same trauma history, go to Vegas, one comes back a normie, one comes back an addict. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes. At the same time, I always use the example, one of our earliest clients, she became an alcoholic at the age of 12. 4 of her friends and her shared 1 bottle of beer they stole from her big brother. On a shot glass of beer, that 12-year-old girl became an alcoholic. You'd be hard-pressed to convince me that she made a character or moral-based decision at 12 that I didn't make 1,000 times over in college. But
well,
again,
I noticed that you... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, no, go ahead.
Please continue your thought. There's a little crosstalk. I think there's a delay, so I apologize. Please continue.
Well, it's just the marketing campaign in our society is put out there to make everyone think bad things only happen to those people. What do I mean by those people? Well, we all have an image of an alcoholic or an addict in our head. Usually it's something that's developed from our childhood. For myself, the image of an alcoholic, the first image I can remember is actually Jimmy Stewart dressed as a hobo in an old black and white movie, hopping on a freight car. Ne'er-do-well, the typical, too large clothes and kind of, haphazard look. And the first image of an addict is a skinny black guy with a giant afro in the 70s standing under a street corner in Harlem. Now, I'm 6'4", Scandinavian youth child. I don't have a lot to fear that I'm ever going to live in a black and white movie, and I'm certainly never going to be a skinny black guy with a giant afro. So what do I have to worry about addiction? The truth is, and I tell people very clearly, we all have a hole in our chest. For most people, it's not that big, and we have manageable tools to deal with the stress. On a bad day, the hole in my chest with all the clients I work with, my own family, and life in general, because life as it's occurring is stressful, I go home, I get a $20 foot massage, I take a 5 to 10 minute hot shower, and I'm right as rain. My wife and kids get in a car accident tomorrow coming to visit me. That is not going to do anything to assuage the pain on it. And I am just going to be as acceptable as anyone else, the potential that if I reach out for drugs or alcohol to get through that moment of time, a week from now, I might not be able to say that I'm not an alcoholic or anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, here are a couple of points that I want to make before the break. I first want to let our listeners know we're speaking with Dave Johnson, who is the director of Oceanside Transitional Living in Malibu. It's a drug and alcohol rehab, and what I have learned is that this gentleman, for his clients, he could take a lot more clients than he actually handles in the beautiful facility that they have, but he has chosen to limit that number to provide the greatest amount of personal care and assistance and support to his clientele. Now, if you have a situation and you have the ability to go to Malibu, maybe you should call a number. I will give the number. It is 818-917 7239. I'll say it again, 818-917-7239. And you really want to check it out. It's oceansidemalibu.com. It is critical. And clearly, by everything that I've been able to unearth and in my due diligence, people are being saved and they're learning how to live. So one of the, I think the key factors that he provides is that evidently he will answer his phone 24/7, even for clients who are no longer in the program. There are people that have gone back home. Sometimes he'll even accompany them back home to help them get boots on the ground or get their sea legs back, if you will, for a couple of days coming home. I think that this is really remarkable, but I also wondered, and that leads to my question, there are so many modalities for treatment and care, and I note that you have adopted the 12-step programs of Alcoholics Anonymous and the other 12-step programs, but you also include other bits of human healing, including, I believe I saw there was yoga and massage, and I firmly believe in the magical healing of the sea and how beautiful that your property is oceanfront with just a few steps down to the water. What made you decide what aspects of treating human beings you would include in your program?
Well, part of it was all, evolved over time, but it was really about treating people as people. The residential treatment programs were designed to be a home, not a facility, not a kind of hysteric, hospital model. They were designed to be a home where you created a family-like environment for people to feel safe enough to heal. The unconscious is pretty powerful, and most of our clients come in with a huge degree of trauma underlying their addiction. They truly are alive today because their addiction bought them time. By creating a family-like environment and treating them like human beings, we create an environment where they feel safe enough to finally let some of these things come up and deal with. And we use the 12-step system in accordance because it's the best long-term support system out there. I mean, you could be in a cruise in the Atlantic, and Wednesday at 4 o'clock there's a meeting for Friends of Bill, in the Purple Room. So anywhere in the world you can reach out and get support, but that support doesn't always deal immediately enough with the underlying trauma, so we try and kind of bridge both together. And in fact, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I do have Dorian on the line, and you've mentioned the word trauma a few times in the conversation, and I'd like to turn, let's see, I don't know what she's doing. I would like to see if I can bring Dorian onto the call and give her an opportunity to express her feelings and her experiences if she is so inclined. Let me see if I can pull her onto the broadcast, and if not, then I would love to learn more about the nonprofit wing of the project and how people who have challenges financially can still get the help they need to live. Let me see if I can get Dorian. Dorian, darling, angel, are you there?
Hi, boo-boo.
Oh, hello. Are you able to participate? I hear you're driving. Do you have your hands free on?
I actually pulled over so that I could speak with you.
Very nice. Okay. Well, then, please hang in there, Mr. Johnson. We'll be right back to you in just a moment. Dorian, how you sent me a link to the site for the organization for this program that is helping people. How are you involved, if you want to discuss that? But the gentleman did bring up trauma, and that many people who seek out the care available have been through traumatic incidents. Now, you were on the program a couple of weeks ago and shared very freely and lovingly about the trauma you've been through. For today's listeners, what is your affiliation with Mr. Johnson's program?
Well, quite frankly, I'm one of his clients. I have been fortunate enough to basically trip and fall into his program at Oceanside, and I think I've mentioned this before. I've had about 17 years of experience of being in recovery, being in and out of the 12-step program, and but I went to rehab back in 2011, but the issue was that although the abuse of alcohol or the self-medicating was addressed, the underlying issues of the trauma, which that was trauma over a lifelong, there were a series of traumatic events, so with PTSD, and then a more complex form of PTSD, which is a prolonged exposure to trauma. And that was never addressed. And unfortunately, the 12-step program is an amazing program. And it saves lives, and it's like Dave was talking about, it's a worldwide thing, so you can be anywhere and go and get the support you need. However, it really pretty much just opens the door to really dealing with what it is that caused you to self-medicate in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And now, I'm sorry, go ahead. You said that you're a client now, so you're a client within this program. What have been the greatest benefits for you in dealing with and I know a lot of your story. We're friends. In full disclosure, I know this lady, and I know a lot about what she's been through. Certainly not everything, but enough. So what are you finding there at Oceanside, dealing with the extreme sort of model of PTSD and all of the things that you are facing? What are you experiencing there? How does it feel? How does it look? How does it work?
Well, that's what I was getting to. Sort of long story short, is that in my 17 years of dealing with specifically recovery, but in the 20 some odd years of therapy and so on and so forth, I have never come across a program or a place that is as life-changing as Oceanside. And the reason being that it's the environment, it's the home environment, It's the level of care. And specifically, I think this is the differentiating factor that Dave was talking about, in that you're not treated as somebody with a disease, per se. Mm-hmm. You're not treated as there's something wrong with you. You're treated as a human being here's let's put the cards on the table. Here's your issue, and everybody has it. It doesn't have to be. Everybody has their thing, their Achilles heel that they have to deal with in life, and you deal with that in order to grow as a human being. The difference with this program, with Dave's approach, is that you're a human being dealing with your Achilles heel, and it just so happens that it happens to be X, and he also brings in cutting edge modalities so it's not like it's not a cookie cutter approach, which in all of my research, which is extensive, most of the programs out there just like here's the template, we're gonna fit you into the template, and then that's it. And it doesn't work. I mean, it has a very, very low success rate. I mean, under 5%, I think. So anyway.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Dorian. Are you doing the program at Oceanside alone, or is little Mister with you? Is there an accommodation for your son? How does that work?
Well, and that was the other thing, was one of the reasons why this is the first time in my life, given the extensive amount of trauma, and for your listeners, and you're more than welcome to, I'm very upfront about it. I'm the survivor of very, very extensive domestic violence. So it's the first time in my life where I've chosen to take a great amount of time to finally heal from all of this so that I can get back to life. With my son, the issue over the last few years was I wasn't able to do that and have my son with me, or have my son in my life. And the facility, it's not a facility, it's a house right on the beach. I mean, you can't get much better than that in Malibu.
In Malibu.
It's like, life sucks. You wake up to the ocean and you're in Malibu.
Yeah, poor you. But
it's pet friendly, so they have animals. You can have an animal there, and they're family friendly. Now, because it's a treatment center, have kids stay there, but they also have a residential sober living. So they make arrangements. The clients, or the client is not really a good word, but the people involved to be able to have their family. So it's pretty amazing.
So here's the thing. You mentioned the clients, and that's, I guess, the appropriate word in this circumstance, but certainly they're people. I would like to know, what is the deal, what is the benefit of the Transitions Charitable Fund as we approach the end of the broadcast? I would like to know how people benefit from the fund, and B, how do they avail themselves to it? Dave?
Hi, how you doing? It's kind of a mom and pop, C3 charity that we organized, so that we saw that some people come in and they have all the financial support in the world, and other people have great insurance. But we also saw a lot of times people, whether it's our facility or others in the community, people going through our program wanted to give back, and then we didn't have the support to be able to help other people sometimes, get to a more appropriate place for themselves, or get the medical needs required, because in California we can't pay for their medication or their medical doctor's visits. And so the charity came about to assist other people who couldn't normally afford it. And so it's run, I think, anything that comes out of the charity other than directly supporting someone in treatment is, I think, the 2% for the accountant Other than that, 98% goes back into whatever facility we send someone to, or whatever doctor needs to be paid. So it's just designed around helping people in recovery.
Thank you. Dorian, are you able to mute your phone? I suspect that we're hearing trucks or vehicles driving by you. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So no worries. I adore you. Now, Dave, you were saying that basically all of the money in the fund that goes to help these people in need goes directly into caring for them, and minus, operational expenses, perhaps 2% for your accountant, et cetera.
Right.
For those listeners who are seeking treatment and have no idea what this is about, what is the typical cost of a program like yours, and how do people go about applying to get help with you?
Well, we do take insurance now, so the best way is to call, and if you have insurance, we can run it. If you don't have insurance, then you can call, we can go over what the financial issues are. But even if someone calls and they're not in our bracket, and we're certainly not anywhere near the most expensive in Malibu, in fact, we're one of the less expensive, but we will at least try and refer you out. So whatever your financial situation is, we'll try and get you better information and point you in the right direction. It's sad but true. Sometimes the 12-step system is going to work best for people. But other times you're going to need more specific help. And, different programs have different opportunities and different resources, so it really just depends on the individual.
Absolutely. So this is in generally, and again, I'm not trying to pry, but for our listeners, they do pay very close attention. To go into a residential facility such as yours or a program such as yours, are we looking at $20,000 for 6 months? I mean, is there a sliding scale? I'm just trying to give them a perspective.
Oh, okay, yeah, certainly. Our generally, you'd be looking at a 28-day cycle would be around 28 to 30, depending on the circumstances. So in Malibu, there are some that go all the way up to $80,000 a month. So in Malibu, we're relatively inexpensive. But again, a lot of it has to do with level of staffing and so forth. But regardless of what the economics are, insurance will cover a lot of it, and we'll work with people depending on what their insurance will cover and what their base is. We just try and do the best we can. Unfortunately, we're a mom and pop operation, so we're not. There's no giant balloon umbrella, some giant corporation or some billionaire hanging behind our head saying we'll take care of it. It's just my wife and I, so we have to balance being able to pay the bills versus how many people we can reach out to.
Certainly. So please tell our listeners how they contact you in order to get some assistance and some help. Every way that's available to them to look you up online or to call, please.
Certainly. The website is oceansidemalibu.com. You can find my intake number, which is my cell, on there as well, and it also should have a link for the charity, if anyone is so inclined. And then you've given out the number here, so by all means, if someone has a question and they have a family member involved or in trouble, feel free to give us a call. One of the things that we do, I was going to mention, is we're very big on what's called family systems, so we want to engage the family because we look at addiction as a team sport. The more we can get the family involved and better educated, the greater the chances that the cure or the lasting effects will be maintained.
And I did read about that on your site where it is really, I think it's all the difference in the world. When I was in the rooms actively, I didn't have any family support except my recovery family. And they're beautiful, right, and that's great. But my family had no earthly clue what I was enduring. And I'm so thrilled that you have a family component so that people can truly come to learn and understand what this fight is all about.
Well, and it's also a misnomer that, most people go into treatment and they're called the identified patient. Well, the identified patient in a family, you in the time that you saw treatment, the identified patient is just the current victim of the family getting the most camera time. I can guarantee if we unraveled your family, we would see multiple generations of people suffering from one type of addiction or another type of behavioral band-aid. You would see communication breakdowns. You'd see systems where the family's ability to assuage their own stress was being colluded. It was being blocked up. And so eventually people started getting in greater and greater pain, and then it started acting out and they started reaching out for external band-aids. Now, in truth, what happens when someone begins to work with a family and the family gets involved is you become, the identified patient comes in thinking they're the weakest member of the family. But in truth, they have an opportunity to become the strongest member because they may actually become the fulcrum point for change to occur across their entire family. So the healing that the individual does in an environment where at least one other member of the family becomes involved, it begins to transcend, to ripple out faster. And so you can begin to help other members of the family with the same tools. I'm a normie. I tell everybody, every single person on the planet should do the 12 steps. It's an amazing therapeutic tool. Most people won't because it's incredibly uncomfortable to go through it. Okay? But if your families get involved, there's an unconscious pressure in any system to maintain itself. So if all I do is treat a client and they go home after 3 months or whatever time, the family unconsciously is poking because they're used to the system when that person was sick. On an unconscious level, they're uncomfortable with change, even though the change is positive. And so we used to call it the Pillsbury Doughnuts. They would poke at their loved one and go, ooh, did you drink last night? Ooh, did you use? Well, you do that to a person in early recovery who's emotionally vulnerable, and the response you're quickly going to get is, really, you think I'm drinking? I'll show you drinking.
Exactly.
Bang, and they reset the clock, even though they don't want to. They don't consciously want to cause more harm, but we're so afraid of change. So by getting more than one person involved, you can break that system open and force it to reform to a new paradigm. And the new paradigm will allow that individual to be healthy and allow the family to then start advancing the tools and the coping systems that they have. I mean, if we really look at one of the systems in place in force-centered society is most families, my own included, was operating on a toolbox that was handed down from my grandfather. Well, the world isn't the same as the world that my grandfather lived in, and it's not changed at the same pace that families naturally adapt. I mean, every parent, I don't know if are you a father?
I am not yet. But boy, do I have a plan. Oh.
Okay, perfect. Well, I can guarantee one thing. The minute your son or daughter is about to be born, you will have a conversation with your higher power. You will draw a line in the sand, and you will make immediate choices to make some improvements over your parenting. And like most people, I did that, and I stopped. I drew a line in the sand. I stepped across that line. I looked back proudly at the sky and said, I'm a better dad. And my dad wasn't a horrible person at all. He's a great guy. But there were observable things that I wanted to make sure my son and daughter always had. I wanted them to hear I loved you every day of their life. I didn't want them to have to internally read it through sarcasm. Okay? But the problem is, if this was 300 years ago and families are making those small upgrades at a time, society is growing at about the same pace and we're all content. And in truth, we were being raised by a village. But in the 1920s, things started to shift. Families went from being the number one educator of our children to now we're number 7. And so the children today do not have the tools that are applicable for the world we live in. I always use this example. I have a toolbox inherited from my grandfather that was the toolbox, his hand-carved toolbox for the Model T Ford that he took off the Ford line. Okay? I love it. I can open that box. I can smell my grandfather's pipe tobacco smoke. I mean, it reminds me of him. But I can't change the tire on my Prius with a single tool in that box, as lovely as they are. Mm-hmm. And so families have been passing down tools, coping systems, and enabling systems to deal with stress that are becoming more and more antiquated more and more rapidly. So by engaging the family, the whole family has an opportunity to take that plaque off the wall that they believe is written in stone. You can't change it, can't teach an old dog new tricks, can't change a leopard spots, all those colloquial sayings we hear in our society. And I tell them to throw it out. Who you are as a family isn't written in stone.
Okay, so let me tell you something about Oceanside Malibu. Huge staff. I mean, huge relative to the fact that there are enough staffers to provide the independent individual care that anyone could desire or require. And you have the access to them, and it's really easy to do. Go to oceansidemalibu.com. And, check out the staff page, and you'll see. And then click the people's names and stuff. These are like real people. This is no dog and pony show. He says mom and pop. But let me tell you something. I've seen some moms and some pops, and they were crap. This isn't crap. This is the real deal. And if you need real-world solutions to real-world challenges, visit OceansideMalibu.com. It is Oceanside Transitional Living in Malibu, and I've seen the place. I looked at the pictures. Are you kidding me? It's like 4 levels. They have these gorgeous oceanside balconies. It's freaking amazing, these decks. You could, like, throw your slipper from the deck into the ocean. That's all I'm saying. So get in that sea and cleanse yourself and work in